Hello everyone, welcome to the video of today. This is Beyond the Truth. Today we are going to be talking about African slave trade. We have all heard the stories about how the big bad colonizing white man abused the poor Africans for centuries and profited off of them. But how did it all come to pass? How did it all function? What were the mechanics of it all? The Portuguese and the English traders didn't invent slavery, nor did they run raid in the jungles of the Congo or the savannas of East Africa to capture slaves. Although Hollywood will try to convince us otherwise. Slavery is as old as civilization itself. When the first big man clan found out that they can threaten other clans and make them do all the work for them, slavery was born, and along with it, the ruling class. There is nothing noble about the invention of kingship. That is just pure bullying. It's as simple as that. A guy with a posse of brutes bullying the weaker, meek population around him into submission. Slavery has existed in Africa in the time of the Egyptians. Then the Greeks and the Romans took part in it. Then the Arabs came and they really turned it into a business. When Islam spread all over North Africa, they came upon the slave markets that had already existed among the tribes in the region, and they streamlined the process. Before the Arabs, slavery was the result of war. The winning tribe would take the losing forces into slavery and do with them as they pleased. But with the opening of the whole Arab market, looking to get their hands on some more slaves, the local rulers and kings were all too happy to cash in on it. Of course, they had to convert to Islam first, so that they would be safe from being turned into slaves themselves, because the Arabs, too, only non-Muslim slaves. Large and powerful empires spring in, especially in West Africa, that kept fighting each other for dominance. The Ghana Empire, the Mali Empire, the Benin Kingdom, the Dahomey, the Ashanti Empire, and many more. And on the East African coast, the Arabs didn't use local rulers and kingdoms as intermediaries. The Sultan of Oman just conquered the whole East African coast, and he was the man to see if you needed some slaves. The Zanzibar slave market was the biggest slave market in the world, controlled by the Omani Sultan, of course, and Zanzibar itself was the second capital of the Sultanate of Oman. You have seen the posts and the memes about the richest man in history, Mansa Musa. For sure that is true. He had a vast empire and he himself was immensely rich. He had the largest number of slaves of all the kingdoms in history that he used to mine gold for him, and he also sold millions of them to the Arabs. And eventually when the Portuguese, the English and the Dutch went out to explore the world and to seek treasures to be made from trade, they came upon the African shores and the African markets and discovered the slave markets. You can only imagine a smooth-talking Arab convincing them, see this one, he's strong, he work all day, he plow field, he's strong like a horse. And this young female, see the curves? You can, No need for more, you get the idea. And that was a good way as any for the white traders to get rich. I imagine the margins were pretty high on that. They just took advantage of the centuries-old established trade network, which in some parts of Africa is still ongoing. I am not saying that Europeans are blameless. During antiquity and the Middle Ages, there were indeed Europeans going on slave capturing raids, and they were enslaving other Europeans and selling them off to the Middle East. The Swedish Vikings had a well-established trade network on the Volga and the Nestar and Dnieper rivers, and the Caspian Sea all the way to every Ottoman and Arab port. And what did you think they were selling? I don't imagine the rich classes of Baghdad fighting over bear and mink furs now, can you? But when the Viking would show up with a shipload of young blonde blue-eyed girls captured in the marshlands of the Baltic lands, well then you can imagine the reaction of all rich men in the Middle East. That was what the Vikings were exporting out of Europe, and that is why there are so many blonde people nowadays in Yemen, Lebanon and Syria. Going on a bit on a tangent here, bit of it has to be said. The most beautiful women in the world come from the Baltic tribes, the Lithuanians, Latvians and Estonians. People tend to think that Polish and Russian women are the most beautiful, but that really comes from the Baltic immigration into Poland and Russia, willing or unwilling. Not saying that all Baltic women went to these countries as slaves, that is not true. People in the Middle Ages were not that different from us. Same as today, we have Ukrainian and Moldovan women moving to the US looking for a better life and better existence back in the day. Many Baltic women were escaping poverty in the marshlands and went off to find a better life in the big cities in Russia, in Poland, and further in Europe. Getting back on topic, the African slave trade was a very bad thing. The damage done to Africa with the taking of millions and millions out had destroyed whole regions, and it went on for centuries. Some regions still can't recover from the damage. Lately there have been a number of historians working on the number of people that have been forced out of Africa, and there is something that strikes me as weird in all those numbers. All historians agree that the number of slaves taken to the Middle East was much larger than the number of slaves taken to the Americas. But when I think about the population structure now, a big question hits me. When we see the descendants of the slaves in the US, we can see them in Cuba and all the Caribbean islands. We can see them in Brazil. But I tried looking for descendants of the slaves that went to the Middle East. There are none. What happened to all those people? Don't take my word on this. I invite everybody to research everything that I have said here. There are many books and websites and documentaries out on the internet about all of this. Find the ones done by African Americans, because we know that is the only way that you can find something credible. Same like Jewish jokes are only funny by Jewish comedians, or Polish jokes are only acceptable by Polish comedians, or black jokes only funny by African American comedians. So go on, do the research, question everything that I have said, use me only as a guide, and tell us what you have found. We will see you next time.